Good morning. I want to start off with some very brief disclaimers so that we're all starting out on the same foot. First of all, what I'm talking about here today reflects my own views and opinions and not those of my employer. I'm going to talk to you as someone who is primarily based within the humanities rather than the STM publishing, and a lot of what I'm going to talk about is more applicable to the scholarly monograph within the humanities than perhaps in an article economy that seems to be so prevalent as an idea. My first question to you is this still working for you? 15 years ago, I was walking the aisles of ALA, and I happened to pass a publisher's booth. This book was on display. I was interested. I picked it up. I rippled through it. I may have chatted to a colleague standing next to me about what I was seeing in the book. And the end result was that I purchased the book on the spot. It was purely a case of serendipitous discovery. There was no other way that I would have encountered this book. But I'm not sure that if you look at this very flat presentation from an online bookstore, that there's anything here that would have engaged me had it shown up online on my computer screen that would have persuaded me to buy this book. There's if I scroll down, there is a table of contents listing, but there is really insufficient information here for me to make a purchasing decision about your book. This, however, is an instance of serendipitous discovery where, in point of fact, I was moved to actually purchase a scholarly monograph. In this instance, this is Jelly Books. It's a startup in the UK. They're currently working with small and independent presses. But you can see that this, when you first arrive, you're simply presented with book covers. And the visual nature of the web means that people register the visual image before they will register the text on the screen. In this instance, not only do I have the book's cover, which I find intriguing, but they've made it possible for me to download a sample of the book's text. I can share my discovery of this book with a friend, which is analogous to turning to that person beside you in the booth and saying, "Ooh, look at this one." The deal icon there has to do with negotiating a lower price, a discount. If the publisher sees that there is a lot of interest in this title, they may be able to issue a coupon. That's a deal that is negotiated between Jelly Books and the publisher. I'm not sure how active that option currently is. And then at the very end, you can see there's a buy button that directs me to an online retailer, so Amazon or Barnes & Noble, wherever. But this was a very attractive and engaging process for me in a way that the previous discovery was not. So the framework for my talk today is actually about discovery. It's not about me searching for your book, because I may not know the title of your book, I may not know the author of your book, but I have an interest in finding out about some topic or issue. Andrew Romberg is actually the founder of Jelly Books, and he posted a blog entry that talked about the different classes, different ways people discover books. So I'm going to go through these, I hope, fairly quickly. I've already covered serendipitous discovery, and I'm going to move on now to social discovery. So the question becomes, how are people talking about your books? And you should be aware that there are people out there who are blogging about your content. You may not be aware of it. The authors may be, because the authors are much more apt to actually do a search on who's linking to them, you know, where are they showing up. This book I actually blogged back in 2007. Within 2 days, the author had actually contacted me to talk to me about what I had posted. And I drew to his attention the fact that the only image of the cover of his book that I could find was in black and white, and that I did not feel that this adequately supported sales of his book, and I suggested ever so gently that he might want to talk to his publisher. But the point was that it's a highly visual environment, and there are people out there, even if you think you're talking about something that is a very narrow topic, there are people who are interested in the content who will talk about your content and who will do the marketing of your content if they can find you and if they can find your content compelling. So Margie talked to some extent about Twitter as a social medium. I eavesdrop a lot on Twitter. I mean, I participate on Twitter, I post on Twitter, but I also listen to what other people are saying about books on Twitter. Doug Armato is the director of the University of Minnesota Press, and he frequently posts about what he's reading. Sometimes he posts about what his press is putting out. This is just an instance of somebody saying, well, you know, I know you all are talking about a book. What exactly is the title of your book? What, you know, how do I find your book? And again, this is pure discovery. How do I, you know, I eavesdrop on a conversation in much the same way I would hear you talking about a book on a plane or in a group. The other element of social discovery is the social networks that exist. And while the big ones are Goodreads and Library Thing and Shelfari, Margie also made reference to some of the other academic networks that exist. And the problem with the academic social networks is that all that a lot of the authors have to post, all that the readers have to post there, are text bibliographic citations. You don't see authors uploading the cover of their book. You don't see them uploading a sample chapter from their book, things that might actually support sales of your publication. And I think it's primarily because initially those social networks were oriented towards journal literature and the sharing of articles. But I do think that authors might be encouraged, researchers might be encouraged to upload samples of the books that they're finding to be of interest. In this instance, this was a casual reader who had been watching Downton Abbey, could not find content of the depth that she wanted, so she came to this group on Library Thing and said, I'm looking for primary accounts about life for a servant in Edwardian times. What can you offer me? And down at the very bottom, dated May 2nd, the response there actually gave this person 8 different titles of books that might answer her need, her interest. And the thing of it is, people assume that some of these mass social networks are talking primarily about mass market fiction, genre fiction, et cetera. There's actually conversations like this that are ongoing there. You just have to look for them. I want to move on to distributed discovery, which is probably something you're much more familiar with. It's the instance where someone discovers a title in the context of a larger conversation. It's one of my favorite blogs. This is a blog that I visit 2 to 3 times a week. And I do that because they are presenting the content in a way that lets me as the reader know that they're aware that this content that they publish fits into the larger mainstream culture. It's accessible to the ordinary individual. It is not sending a message that this content is really only intended for a very narrow elite. Ordinary human beings can read Oxford University Press content and take something away. And they have a certain sense of humor about their presentation. I took the slide out, but a recent posting was about how to survive a zombie apocalypse. And what made the post work was that they managed to bring up the Oxford Encyclopedia of Medieval Warfare and Technology, which you'll agree is not a title that's going to get a lot of buzz out there. And yet, this was how they could engage a reader's attention. They were really, really smart during the craze for Downton Abbey, because Oxford University Press posted about 6 different entries over the course of 12 months. And in this instance, they tied what they posted to a variety of storylines and themes from the 2nd season of Downton Abbey. So, the question here is, Chauffeur Branson was interested in politics and history after the end of the war. He'll return to Ireland with Lady Sybil to take up Ireland's cause as a journalist. What was happening in Irish politics at the time? And again, these titles that they are featuring on their blog are not necessarily mainstream titles. They are clearly scholarship, but they position them in a way that makes the ordinary reader think, hey, I'm interested, I want to know. And I can tell you that there was a title at the very end of this entry that I purchased on the basis of this blog entry. I then enthused about it on one of my social networks. 2 more people bought the book. So this is an effective mechanism for selling, and it is a way that you can reach out to a larger audience. I wanted to make you aware of a site like this again because I was interested in Downton Abbey. I went and was looking for suggestions about World War I, and I was more interested in social history than I was in either political or military history. That being the case, I was rooting around and I couldn't find anything. The Amazon recommendations weren't working for me. I was having no luck finding content, and lo and behold, I encountered this website, which is essentially the work of 2 bloggers, and they have started this reading challenge that has been ongoing for several years, and it's all focused on war through the generations. And so far, they've covered the war in Vietnam, they've covered the Second World War, and the American Civil War. 2013, the reading challenge is actually about the American Revolutionary War. This is a way, again, of inviting the reader to deepen their knowledge about a topic. And it's self-motivational. In an age where we're hearing people want to participate in MOOCs, this is how they find out about new resources, new ways of learning. So there's a huge hunger out there that people really want to find your books. This is Goodreads. Amazon acquired them at the end of March of this year. The question was, why? Did they do it because they had a user base of 18 million? Did they do it because of all the reviews that had been posted on this social network? My personal belief is that, at least in part, Amazon purchased Goodreads because it gives them a huge monopoly on not just transactional behavior by readers, but also behavioral data. What do these readers, how are they reading in clusters? What are the relationships that exist between readers? Who is influencing who? And at this point, Amazon actually has a huge monopoly on the social networks of readers. So that means they own Goodreads, they own Shelfari, they have a minority interest in library thing, they have access to huge amounts of data, and I think publishers should be aware of this and begin to start pushing a little bit to have some of that shared with them. This is an instance of incentivized discovery, and that's primarily where essentially the publisher, and you'll see in this instance it's Yale University Press, makes the announcement that I have 16 copies of my book to give away. The participants on the network actually put their names in that they have an interest, and in this instance they had 10 copies available and 500 people requesting it. Now the understanding is that once you get one of those books, you're going to post something, you're going to create the buzz around this title that perhaps the university press itself might not be doing. I want to go very quickly on some of what's emerging as the next step, and I'm glad that Till made the point that our customers are really not different, and that what works in trade can in fact actually apply to scholarly books. This is Ripple. It entered a public beta within the past 3 weeks. It's, the URL is actually ripplebooks.com. In this instance, again, they are stressing the visual appeal of the cover. They claim that it's something of a social network, although that aspect of this site is minimized, because they're not so much interested in fostering readers building connections. They are much more interested in using the site to drive marketing. So they have set up 2 options, questions and lists. And what those are it's essentially curation without conversation. So that they don't want to hear about my cat, but they do want to know what I'm reading, and they want me to tell other people what I'm reading. So I can go in there, I can create a list, whether it's May arrivals, maybe it's recommendations, so you want to discover myths. The users create these lists that other people see. Again, the visual appeal is absolutely key. And in terms of the questions, it's very interesting. They will ask a question, and it is phrased in such a way that you don't get to provide your rationale for why you loved a book or why you think this book is relevant. It is purely a case of, tell us the title of the book that you read and want to recommend here, and the system then uploads the actual cover. So again, it's an interesting, and I think it's a fun way to while away 15 minutes. If you have nothing to do, you can discover books in this fashion. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I suddenly had this beta option appear on my Amazon account where I could create a collection. Now, Amazon is imitating Pinterest in this instance, because Amazon, I think, is mimicking Pinterest in order to support their clothing and fashion line of products, but it also works for books. And in this instance, again, I'm only relying on the cover art that's presented as a way of drawing attention to a work. It's not until I click through that you get to the actual product page on Amazon. It's an interesting approach. I'm not sure how widely available the feature is. I think the fact that I took advantage of it once means that Amazon has added it permanently to my account. So a lot of this depends on who you're talking to, what they see you participating in. And I don't have a whole lot to say about the role of mobile in this environment, because I think when it comes to books on a mobile environment, I think a lot of the focus is still on search. That may need to be shifted. But these are, these are 2 of the most broadly accessed applications. So, what do I hope you all are taking away from my talk? And first of all, I can't reiterate strongly enough to you that I think the role of the visual as a marketing tool in the current environment, it is very important. I don't think we can get away with flat titles with a mere title on them. You have to have some image, you have to have color, you have to have something that will attract attention in an environment such as Pinterest or on Ripple, something like that. You really want a very strong visual. You also want to make sure that all of the elements of your book are searchable, so that if I don't have the right vocabulary for the words in the title of your book, I can somehow or other find it through chapter headings. I think the idea of abstracts for chapters of books is absolutely brilliant. I know that many publishers are moving in that direction. I think it can't happen rapidly enough, because again, I need to know as much information as possible about your book before I'm actually going to plunk down the 3 digits that might be required in order for me to buy your book. And finally, maintain an active online presence. And I say it helps if you blog, it helps if you comment, But you'll notice I even said you could lurk. And I say that because on Library Thing, the Folio Society has a group of devotees of about 1,000 people. They know that there is a mole from the Folio Society, doesn't participate in conversations, doesn't say anything, but they know that the Folio Society is watching that particular group. And when they really want to get a message to the Folio Society, they address messages to Mr. Mole. And the thing of it is, they know that the Folio Society is paying attention. There have been shifts in policy based on the conversations that these people are having on social networks. So I really want to stress to you that if you really want to be successful in marketing your scholarly monographs, you have to be out and part of this world. It's no longer possible for you to retain the sense that you live and work within an ivory tower. You don't. You're part of this broad, mainstream culture. People are interested in your product if you give them half a chance of finding what you do, and you have great quality content. And people will buy it. They just have to be able to find out that it's there. So, thank you.